Bonjour.
Bonjour, bonjour, bienvenue.
Bien. Merci, c'est un plaisir.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
Oui, on attend juste 2 minutes le temps que tout le monde rentre.
Allez-y, allez-y. Quand même renommé.
Bonjour, bienvenue à tous et à toutes.
Merci.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Voilà. Ah, vous souhaiterez qu'on diffuse la vidéo du coup, ou Monsieur Kamal?
Oui, je vous écoute.
On diffusera aussi votre vidéo?
Oui, si vous voulez.
Ok.
On a choisi plutôt l'option de consacrer les 5 minutes pour un pitch.
Ok.
On avait compris qu'on avait le choix.
Oui, oui,
Et
oui.
que ouais, si vous voulez bien.
Ça marche. Bah, au pire, on peut aussi l'envoyer dans le chat. Comme ça.
Oui, voilà. On a supposé que les gens l'ont déjà consulté et on préfère consacrer les 5 minutes pour en discuter.
Ok, on aura peut-être même un peu plus de temps.
Tant mieux parce qu'on est sur du 6 minutes.
Ok, bon, bah, je vais démarrer cet atelier bâtiment et construction.
We are now going to start this workshop on building and construction, sustainable construction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this workshop as part of our Climate Change Summit Africa 2021, which is a virtual format this year. We had planned to do it in Dakar, as you all know. Unfortunately, it was not possible due to the pandemic, but we hope that we will be able to meet physically next year for the Summit 2022 in Dakar. I'm saying this already because we want to keep that in mind as we prepare throughout this year so that we can boost this coalition working on building and sustainable construction. So welcome to our workshop. The purpose of this workshop is to gather all the stakeholders of our coalition, Sustainable Building and Construction. We will start with the GlobalABC, represented today by Jonathan, who is here with us. He will be presenting his PowerPoint, and this purpose will be rather interactive. The chat is open. If you want to post any comments, any questions, any suggestions throughout the workshop, please send us a message. We do have live translation. If you need translation, you can click on the globe at the bottom of the screen.
If you need to follow this session in English, you can click on the globe at the bottom of the screen where it says interpretation and choose the language that you wish to follow this session in. Donc, on aura majoritairement des francophones aujourd'hui.
We will have mainly French speakers today. We do have English speakers as well. So if you need the translation, please use it. I want to thank also the other organizations who are here with us today, FH Senegal, ADEM, and the city of Dakar. They will all present their topics. We also have project owners, carriers, who will also share their projects with us. I already said that it would be an interactive workshop. As I said earlier, use the chat. I'm going to start now by handing the floor to Jonathan, who is going to present the global ABC strategy towards COP26. Jonathan, you have about 8 minutes, 10 minutes rather. Let me find the right screen first of all. Can you see my screen? I think we're all good. We do see your screen. Yes. All right. Sorry about this, but I'm not sure if I should apologize for this, but even though I speak good French, I'm still going to do this in English, however, because my PowerPoint is in English and I have not had time to prepare in French, and it will be a bit tricky for me to switch to French. So if you do have any questions, you can pose them in French and I can always answer your questions both in English and in French. The purpose of this presentation, however, I do have a few slides regarding the Global Alliance for Sustainable Construction. But what we wanted to put forward is really what we are preparing as part of the COP26 meeting, which will take place beginning of November in Glasgow, and how to put forward all the issues related to building and construction. One of the key issues to reach our goals in terms of the climate convention. Just a few reminders.
But so the buildings and construction sector is a heavyweight for climate change mitigation adaptation. It is currently responsible for almost 40% of global CO2 emissions and 35% of final energy demand. In addition, of course, buildings are increasingly under pressure with the changing climate. Of course, and including for, of course, the number of people that actually live into slums and that are exposed to, that are most exposed, I would say, to extreme weather events, high temperature, and the effects of climate change in general. Overall, it is critical that, you know, buildings actually play a key role in general for people because they offer critical services, including health, education, culture, storage of goods and data, tertiary activities. So they are a key to sustainable infrastructure. And they are also a key sector for the economy in terms of jobs. And this also fits very well in the whole context of the COVID-19 recovery efforts. And one of the major push that you know we want to make is to make sure that actually when we look at COVID-19 recovery, we actually look also at what we say building back better. So actually looking at the building sector and do things better than we used to with the funding that will be provided. The current ambition in the sector is not strong enough. Today, if you look at the naturally determined contributions, which are the commitments from the governments in terms of GHG emission reductions, even if they were fully implemented, only 60% of the current emissions from the building sector would be addressed. And we know that actually, you know, putting those commitments into practice actually still requires very strong effort and doesn't happen from one day to the other. Another thing, of course, is that most of the buildings that actually, are still to be constructed. In many countries, when we look at the cities, it's about, you know, half of the buildings that will be standing in 2050 are still to be built. So there's a major construction that is still going to happen over the coming years. And that means that we now have like a very critical but very narrow window also for sector transformation towards full decarbonization and making the investments future-proof. And it's for that reason that the Global Alliance for Building and Construction was established. It was established at COP21. The French government actually invited UNEP and a number of other governments to really put forward the buildings agenda in the COP. So it's the first time that buildings agenda was put forward. And today we have almost 200 members, including 33 countries. Some countries in Africa, like Kenya, also Côte d'Ivoire, Senegal, Morocco, but a number of others also. And we are, of course, still inviting countries to join the alliance and to commit to a common vision for zero emissions, efficient and resilient building and construction sector. The main objective that we have is, of course, being a global advocate and a catalyst for the sector. So to ensure a global transformation and bring all the different actors together behind it. Be a trusted platform to set targets and track progress, so that actually we can, helps the country setting targets, but also show what is the progress every year in terms of, climate mitigation and adaptation in the sector, and helping, of course, the countries to set priorities measured based on their situation and being able to share the best practices and experience from other partners around the world. So key activities, on the one hand, we, for setting targets, supporting countries, we have what we call the GlobalABC building and construction roadmaps. I will provide more information on that in the next slides. The other objective is being a catalyst, so increasing collaboration. As you know, the buildings and construction sector, it's a big group of different stakeholders, and it's not always easy to make everybody work together for the same vision. And so that is one of the key things that we are trying to do, is how we bring these different partners together. How can you bring the private sector to work with the governments, to work with the research institutes to actually advance, the decarbonization of the building sector. Another key element of what we do is tracking progress, as I was mentioning. So each year we are producing a global status report on buildings and construction with a focus on what is the progress in terms of climate change. We are not on track. So the new edition of the global status report will be released on the 15th of October. But it's already, while there has been quite a bit of progress in terms of policies, codes, and all that aspects, the implementation, of course, takes some time. And so the emissions are still increasing in the sector. And the last point is actually being a global advocate. And this is really engagement at, the high level forums like the COP, for example. So about the targets, the way that what we have been putting forward is roadmaps that present a framework and a process for a comprehensive approach to emission reductions from the built environment, but along the life cycle. And that's why we have, with more than 700 experts that were involved in the process, identified these 8 categories that you can see as the key areas that need to be tackled together to be able actually to do a full transformation of the sector. The roadmaps aim at providing an aspirational short and medium term vision and longer term targets and timelines. So our roadmap actually goes up to 2050 with intermediary steps for 2030. So we have intermediary targets, and then the longer term target is 2050. The main push that we're trying to do is actually striving towards zero emissions by 2050, which will still be a challenge, but we need to, of course, start engaging in this strongly if we want this to happen. And of course, it requires the different actors and different sectors to work together. Now moving to global advocacy, and more specifically, I would say to the COP. So at the COP26, there will be for the first time a cities, region, and built environment day. Last time that there was one, as was actually at COP21 when we launched the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. And in this context, this COP is pretty important for us because we have the opportunity to really put the buildings agenda forward in the negotiations. So it's part of actually the presidency agenda of the COP, so the UK agenda of the COP. And we've been working with a big group of different partners in the preparations of the COP, but also the COP presidency to actually prepare the cities, region and built environment day, and as well as a number of other events that we want to do along the whole 2 weeks of the COP. Our intention is to actually be able to, to talk about the links each day, I would say the links to the thematic of the day. As you can see on the slide, on the 3rd of November, the focus will be on finance, and we will make sure that we have a number of events where we communicate specifically of what it means, climate finance in the context of the building sector. Second day will be energy, then youth and public empowerment, nature. So we are actually going to have targeted messages and have targeted events on each of these topics. And on the cities, regions and built environment day, we are organizing one ministerial roundtable, and we are building a commitment for countries to actually put forward at the COP specifically, and have a special discussion between the ministers. And we also are having a CEO roundtable. So there will also be a private sector roundtable where CEOs can actually also show their commitment in this sector towards addressing climate change in the built environment. So on the Built Environment Day, we are actually working with the different partners that you can see here. It's of course the cities, C40, which is an alliance of cities for climate change. But then we also have the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the World Green Building Council. So these are some of the key actors that we are working with to actually shape the agenda and push during that specific day. The vision specifically for the cities, region, and built environment at COP is to establish the built environment as a critical and transformational role for both mitigation and adaptation. And as you can see here, there's one thing is about the critical sector, showing one voice and one ambition, which means actually having a similar voice coming from I would say the government side, but also the other actors, so the private sector more specifically. Ensure that we have an engaged and a strong number of commitments. So it will also be a moment where a number of announcements will be made in terms of commitments and programs that actors are putting forward. Providing a number of action solutions, pathways. I will mention a little bit more about the pathways, but there are a number of processes under the COP to actually provide some vision, in a sense, for different sectors. Buildings is one, and there are some, I would say, initiatives associated to which are the race to resilience and the race to the zero. Now I don't remember the name exactly. Sorry. I will come back to it a little bit later because I will show it. But so that these are like commitments from different, especially bringing the private sector to actually support the pathways that are being put forward at the COP. And then, of course, stimulating radical collaboration for the transformation of the sector. So that's that's the vision that has been discussed with the COP presidency and the different actors that are preparing for this specific topic at COP26 and specifically the Cities, Region and Built Environment Day. So yeah, so this is the web page that is being put forward. There are a number of events already that have been taking place in preparation for this, including, as you may know, the different climate weeks in the different regions. Actually, I think next week is the Africa Climate Week. And so there will be a number of events happening there also, where we will be present also for the building sector specifically. What we are putting forward specifically at the COP is a country commitment. There are already a number of commitments out there from the private sector, from different actors. But what we are trying to do is to align the commitments between them and specifically put forward a new commitment or an updated commitment, I would say, for the building sector. The focus for us is really to push for like increasing the targets and the actions in the nationally determined contributions. So the countries basically that would join, the commitment will commit to strengthening the building sector in their NDCs, that they would put forward, like, engage specifically to create a reliable, enabling and policy framework, and really to show, how countries can lead by example, meaning that governments have an important role to play to transform the sector, because they are the ones who actually can show the model or be an example for the other actors to follow. And especially since a lot of the procurement goes in terms of in the construction, whether it's public buildings, but other type of construction also, if they start integrating sustainability aspects at their level, it will actually help the private sector also moving in that direction, and different actors in the countries moving in that direction. And so I was mentioning on the pathways. So the pathways is something that is defined under the Marrakesh Partnership that is under the UNFCCC. And it's basically roadmaps that they put forward to help the parties and also the non-party stakeholders, meaning all the other organizations, to identify the actions that will be needed between now, 2021, up to 2050 to actually achieve our vision. And here specifically, it's about going to the 1.5 degrees. I mean, keeping the levels to 1.5 degrees maximum of change of temperature of the climate. So, and linked to these pathways, there are actually the race to zero and the race to resilience. And that is a way to kind of bring the non-state actors on board to support these pathways and actually to get additional commitments. And as you can see here on the race to zero, there are already a big number of businesses that actually. So these are actually the slides that I wanted to present. And I think the main idea that I wanted to convey here is that we are still seeking for actors to join these different commitments. So I invite the actors, to actually really look at opportunities to join, whether it's, the non-state actor commitments for the COP, but also the country commitment that we are putting forward under the Global Alliance for Buildings and Construction. So Eva, I will stop here and hand over back to you. I hope I was not too long.
Merci beaucoup, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It was very clear, a lot of information there. And I think you can see the number of campaigns that do exist and to strengthen the actions that already are taking place. So it's great. Thank you very much for your presentation. And in this way, I can now give the floor to a person from the city of Dakar to see what can be done and how actions can be supported on the field. So I'm going to give the floor to Madame Juga, Mrs. Juga, by asking the question on the efforts that were made by the city of Dakar in terms of sustainability recently. I will give the floor to you immediately. And I can share the screen. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eva. Thank you to the organizers for the invitation to take part in this forum. So you can see the PowerPoint? Yes, I can see it. I was asked to communicate on sustainable constructions and buildings in the city of Dakar. So the vision of the city of Dakar it's the next slide, please. The vision of Dakar city. So it says Dakar as a sustainable and resilient city. I think ideas on this there were ideas already shared yesterday, but globally it is about having policies for urban landscapes and to involve a greater number of people, of different actors, but also to try to be an engine and bring momentum in this area. So to do so, the city of Dakar has adopted the climate plan like other countries. So it's a tool that it has adopted called the PCET, like other countries around the world. And this plan, this climate plan, it was about defining an action plan. An action plan that was adapted to climate change. So different actions were put in place, and in 2019 there was an audit, an energy audit of the city's heritage. This concerned 6 buildings in the city of Dakar, heritage buildings. So it is about modernizing, improving, and mastering the energy consumption in these buildings. You can note that among these buildings, only one dates back from the 1960s. The others are more recent. And this is the communal building, which is the only one to have, from the very start, had a conceptual approach and a very high quality of building. So it follows the parallelism. It is a very specific design that you can see. I'm sorry, I should have added a picture so you could have a clear picture of it. But what would have been interesting in this audit is to make a difference between this building from the 1960s, late 70s, and those who were built much later. The results we had from this audit consisted to try to see how to pursue and how to try to have better energy consumption in the city with new LED electricity, for example, renewable energies in some part of the cities, and a change in behavior of users, which was very important, that the city of Dakar put at the heart of its preoccupations and concerns. Other actions, like the rehabilitation of certain buildings, renovation, pilot projects with the building of a bioclimatic building at the center in Ouattara. It's a geriatric building, and the building is supposed to begin shortly. The architectural project has adapted to the standards that are low in terms of energy consumption, and perhaps it's the moment to show the video now. Eva, please. And you will see how it was designed, going in the right direction. We're trying to protect facades from the sun, preference for cross-functional ventilation and cooling systems, creating a patio where trees are planted, or at least a minimum trees, with the use of local materials for some. The walls, for example, are in concrete made from earth. The thermal isolation with multi-layers for the roof, double windows to avoid damages from the sun and the heating from the sun, and globally decreasing the energy consumption. So other projects are undergone with the use of C40 to lead to having more green infrastructure and having green energy consumption as well. Dakar, beyond the projects, the city of Dakar must provide an answer to face the climate and environmental concerns and challenges. It must really make sure it does the right things for the city, and Dakar has inherited from great tolerance, and there's a necessity for all the places to work alongside one another, but without losing the identity of the city. So for Dakar, it will be a win-win situation to rebuild it. We know very well that the person before me mentioned demolition, and others have also spoken about it. And there are impacts when you rebuild greenhouse gas emissions. Dakar must rethink its city by taking all of these elements into account. And by refurbishing the city hall, the city is paving the way for this passing on of the heritage and values of the city. So the city is trying to rethink the center of the city with partners in Morocco. I was asked to speak briefly, so here we are. Thank you very much. Thank you. It was very interesting to have this point of view and see the efforts made by the city of Dakar, very concrete example. Thank you very much. So now let's see companies. We'll move on to companies with the country of Senegal. Mrs. Keita, if you are here, I would like you to share your screen now, and you have 8 minutes to give your speech. Thank you very much. Are you still here? I can see you. Yes, I followed the previous presentation. I'm going to share my screen with you in a moment. Please let me know if everything is okay. Could you put it full screen, please? Thank you. Yes, great. So hello, everyone, and thank you for this invitation. My purpose is going to be targeting questions of advocacy for low carbon upstream of projects. Just to present you with this topic, we are in an emergency situation, and currently EFAGE, the EFAGE group in Senegal, has decided to get involved in this low carbon strategy to reduce carbon emissions. This strategy, we need to make a note of it. It is a strategy that is in line with sustainability. What does it mean concretely? It means that the idea is to add these elements of sustainable energy to improve the impact of the activities, these commercial activities. So this is a very important point for us. The second point, of course, we will not be able to have this kind of approach without, at the same time, having a national strategy, being part of the national strategy. Jonathan mentioned it as well. We have NDCs that are defined nationally. They depend from the Paris Agreement. We have signed agreements in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Annie Jouga talked about the climate plan and territorial plan, which is also a strong commitment made by the city of Dakar. And I would say, thirdly, a great ongoing project by the state to refurbish a landfill. And so here, this is to set the landscape. Why finally did we commit to this kind of low carbon advocacy project? And I'll explain what it is about. We want to launch a mutation, a progressive mutation of economic models to add, to really incorporate and embed these climate stakes in business exchanges. Our idea is also to systematically embed and integrate these criteria of sustainable development in the choices of our laureates during the call for tenders with companies, suppliers, everything. We want to invite clients and to launch these call for tenders, call for projects with sustainable development in mind. And it is not yet the case today. We will go into details. So this advocacy is meaningful for us, and why? Because we realize that 90% of our green gas emissions, and when you look at the graph on the right-hand side, it is in scope 3 that it appears. And what is scope 3? Scope 3 is a scope that corresponds to all the materials to which that we use and that we get from our suppliers. The scope 3 have all the characteristics when you want to have a sustainable building. So there was a certain coherence to adopt this advocacy plan and to lead all the actors to introduce, to embed more of these sustainable criteria. I would like to attract your attention on a topic that is very topical, European taxonomy. There's a listing of the economic activities. This was launched by the European Union to engage actors to contribute to the sustainable objectives. And this is a tool that is going to help to boost all the question around sustainable projects, sustainable buildings. Just a reminder of the advocacy. This advocacy, this commitment was translated by a support of a certain number of programs on which we are working on. The city of Dakar, for the city, there's a module of causes and consequences of climate change, and internally we deployed it, but also it was shared with our stakeholders, and among them the city of Dakar. You can see an image on the right hand. We trained the technical teams in Dakar by sharing with them a certain number of training sessions and modules, and this one was on consequences of climate change. We supported also another program called City Lab Senegal, a common program with the Mackenzie's Africa and the Presidential Council of Africa, which helps emerge multi-actor projects around sustainable cities. Internally, of course, in the same way that we had training sessions for collaborators, we wanted to have trainings in low carbon. I would also like to call your attention on platforms that can provide solutions for low carbon productions and to underline and enhance small, medium-sized companies that have innovative solutions, and especially because we are convinced that it is with a group of actors with local solutions that we will be able to have these sustainable constructions and buildings. So our strategy has 8 pillars. These 8 pillars, without going into details, are key pillars that help us to really lead, I would say, projects, carry out projects. So whether for eco-mobility, design of sustainable materials, circular economy, biodiversity, making spaces greener for urban agriculture, water, sanitation, etc. So the subject I wanted to insist on was the call for tenders or call for projects for low carbon. We know that there are ongoing projects today, and today we have operators that are working on these questions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In terms of the material that they use, we talk about renovating buildings as well. There have been renovations and refurbishings. For example, the market Kermel and the Saint Louis Church, these were old buildings, and the question of low thermal materials were very interesting. We are trying to go in this direction to push manufacturers, builders to go in this direction and to find the right solutions that are low carbon. Another example I wanted to share with you is that to try to push forward these small and medium-sized companies that are working on these solutions. They can be very innovative. They can suggest bricks that are made of terracotta and other materials. So there are a certain number of obstacles that we have identified, and these obstacles are in the call for tender phase. What we noticed, and in a detailed way, is that globally, for the call for tenders, we don't have a taking into account of the sustainable materials at the initial phase of the project. There are very little technical studies that are made upstream of the projects that will introduce and all of these low carbon elements and the objective, the main challenge here is due to the lack of technical skills sometimes. So this is why we are trying to deploy these training sessions, and we need to use surveys or studies in order to be able to embed them from the initial phase. A big element also is the forbidding of variance. You don't have the possibility to have a different possibility or suggestions once the project is set. So this question of variance is very important for us, and this is why there is advocacy in the public sector to be able to add in these market codes, in these call for tenders, the notion of variance. Second important point is the ecosystems. There were obstacles for these questions, for the ecosystems, the questions of skills and competences. And finally, there's not much sharing of experience between the different construction field and the different actors in the field. So this is a key point. And the idea would be to make links stronger and closer. So there are leads of suggestions that we have. It would be to promote certain school for construction, incubation projects, and public-private support schemes through the city, as in the City Lab program. Another obstacle is the non-eligibility of startups and SMEs to the first rank markets. It is very hard for them to offer their candidacy, and so it is not open to them. And these SMEs could in fact be candidates. So, and answer to these call for tenders in a spontaneous way. So a lot of training is necessary to do so. And in order to secure this, we could have specific trainings and trainers that could work on those points. Third aspect I wanted to insist on is the integration of these sustainable existing strategy for call for tenders, really integrating these strategies, embedding them with contents that are more detailed from the beginning phase, as we said, initial phase. The NDCs are there, we have solutions, low carbon solutions, but what is necessary is that it should be completely embedded in the call for tenders. We noticed also that the way in which sustainable constructions are seen could be improved. There's a lot of improvement to do in this area. And that could also be integrated in the call for tenders directly. So the candidate, whomever he or she be, could offer recycling solutions or could talk about protection of environment. I will stop here to respect the dedicating timing, and thank you for your attention. Mute. You're on. Thank you. Thank you. A great sound. Thank you for this presentation. Very clear. It was extremely interesting to highlight the pain points and the obstacles, and as well as the solutions that we could have to face these challenges. The sharing of knowledge, expertise, of course, is something that we are trying to work on within the coalitions. And in case you want to give us some feedback on the what happened in Senegal and Dakar, if you two are still here, perhaps you want to take the floor again, if you want to give us more details on your experience with how Eiffage in Senegal worked with. So what we did, as I said, I talked about an advocacy with our stakeholders. We identified Dakar as a main stakeholder. And so we contacted Dakar, a city, to offer, as I said, the technical teams to talk about the subject, climate change. And as I said, we had built a module internally. And by approaching the city of Dakar, we formatted a 3-day session with different models, different internal capacities and specificities from our internal company. We had one training model on climate change. And in the end, it didn't stop there because Anishuga, perhaps you know about this, but behind the project, we had imagined with the rehabilitation or refurbishing of the city hall that we could associate it to building a garden and adding a whole project around circular economy as well. So the technical teams were interested, and I think that there was a raising awareness on these aspects, on circular economy, namely, and the idea behind it is to see how we can lead common projects that have that are structured with the city of Dakar. And it is through these advocacies that we can have pilot project. I love this idea of pilot projects because you have to start with something, and already having small pilot projects helps you move forward and be more efficient. Thank you very much for this extra information. And I think that it is very important to talk about the projects, concrete projects, and namely for the work we did this year with the call for contributions that we led in 2021, and for our Climate Change Summit, which was to take place in Dakar. It is during this call for contributions that we noticed there were two concrete projects. These are the two projects submitted videos that are like pitches. We are going to share them with you in a second. We had also other representatives of these projects, and they will provide more information if Hélène is still here and Mr. Kamal as well. Mrs. Kamal, so Mr. Kamal, sorry. No, I must start with Aden to first show you the video, and then we will have the pleasure to listen to both of you about the project. I will launch the video right now, and we would have liked to have Mr. John also to have his testimony as well, but we will listen to him in the video in a second.
Depuis plusieurs années, décennies, le typha australis, un loso invasif à croissance rapide, prolifère dans le bassin du fleuve Sénégal et génère de nombreux problèmes tels que l'obstruction des canaux d'irrigation, l'envahissement des zones de pêche, la prolifération de moustiques et la destruction de la biodiversité. Le programme TICAO, TIFA Combustible Construction en Afrique de l'Est, a pour ambition la réduction des émissions de gaz à effet de serre, la réduction de la demande énergétique et la déforestation en accord avec les politiques environnementales du Sénégal et de la Mauritanie.
Depuis 2011, le GRET travaille en partenariat avec l'Institut supérieur d'enseignement technologique de Rosso sur la valorisation du TIFA comme biocombustible renouvelable et alternatif au charbon de bois pour les activités de cuisson. Après plusieurs étapes de recherche et développement, 2 techniques de production ont été retenues. Une production artisanale à base de TIFA, de gomme arabique et d'eau. Le GRET accompagne 2 groupements communautaires qui produisent chacun 700 kg de combustible par mois au Sénégal. Une production semi-industrielle à base de TIFA et de balles de riz, dont une ligne de production est en cours d'installation à Rosso en Mauritanie. À terme, elle devrait permettre la production de 80 tonnes de biocombustible par mois. L'utilisation d'1 tonne de ce biocombustible TIFA à la place du charbon de bois permet d'éviter la coupe de 7 tonnes de bois et l'émission de 10 tonnes de CO2.
Plusieurs partenaires joignent leurs compétences et savoir-faire pour le développement des matériaux à base de TIFA, terre TIFA, isolant thermique, etc. À travers cette valorisation de TIFA en matériaux biosourcés locaux, couplés à la conception bioclimatique des bâtiments, nous permet de séquestrer le carbone, développer une économie circulaire et proposer des habitats sahéliens adaptés au climat local avec un bon confort thermique. Promouvoir ces matériaux innovants, partager ses connaissances et savoir-faire à travers des chantiers démonstrateurs de construction de bâtiments permet ou favorise la montée en puissance des acteurs sénégalais et mauritaniens.
En résumé, il s'agit d'une approche globale qui prend en compte une meilleure connaissance de la plante et vise à répondre aux besoins des territoires. À travers le développement de 2 filières de valorisation du TIFA, comme combustible biomasse renouvelable et comme matériau de construction local et biosourcé en lien avec une démarche plus large de conception de bâtiments bioclimatiques, le programme TICAO contribue activement à la lutte contre le changement climatique et à l'adaptation à ses conséquences.
Oui, donc merci encore pour cette super
Thank you
vidéo.
very much. Again, you can find the link in the chat so you can watch this video again in the pitch corner of Climate Change. I will now hand the floor to Hélène, who can maybe explain to us this project. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eva. Hello, everyone. To be honest, I haven't much to add. We have seen the video, maybe 2 points. First of all, the interest for biosourced materials, a substitute to other types of material from fossil quarries, which of course are transmitting more emissions, and also the biosourced materials are better. Also, these characteristics, hydrothermal characteristics and ice insulating materials is much better for the comfort of the populations. So this needs to be really put forward, especially in hot weather countries. This is mainly focused at Senegal and Mauritania. This is mobilizing a lot of stakeholders, NGOs, companies, universities, local governments. We have a lot of people mobilized around this kind of project. The second point is subsidies or the sectors. We need to have a systemic approach for all these kinds of projects, and we need to think beforehand how to do this. And so there's a whole work that needs to be done there to better own these kind of projects and know and see what we can do also in collaboration with the local populations. We need to look at how we handle these things practically speaking, and also deploying a logistic platform for drying, for shopping, etc. As far as we're concerned, the fuel or the building materials, there are other possibilities along the riverbank, other materials, other other possibilities really, and this is an important and great resource. We need to also develop materials, tertifa materials and other types of materials with different techniques which can be developed and needs to be homologated and validated. We need to make sure that these are approved, these kinds of materials are approved. We need also to be able to showcase constructions using these kinds of materials to build beautiful building with local materials. And of course, then we need to capitalize what we are doing and to market what we're doing. So it's a whole global approach, if you like, to see how we can develop these kinds of sectors. I can see that Jonathan has asked a question for you.
Non, je veux bien justement peut-être en parler parce que moi je crois que
I think from my own experience, one of the key issues in terms of innovating solutions, there are some great solutions sometimes, but the issue often is that we stop at the prototype, because to move this to the market and to have this approved by the legislation is where the main difficulty stands with these new types of materials. I was wondering how it is in Senegal with the new material. How did you manage to have it included, to integrate this new material? Do you have a market outcome of this material? Is it something that you're going to market? We want to use these kinds of material rather than other types which are on the market today. I'm asking this because I have worked with people in Ghana who have developed a new technology using coconut shells. They have developed something that's very interesting, but they have huge difficulties trying to push this forward and move on to the next step, to take it to the market and to have this approved in compliance with the norms. I heard you talk about normalization. Do you have similar challenges in Senegal, for example? What would be your feedback on this? It's a very interesting question indeed. This is part of our challenges in these kinds of projects. Indeed, for the time being, we do have several projects still on the way at different phases. Those that are more advanced are tertifa-based materials. This project is based on previous experiences under the auspices of Ernest Dion, who is also part of the GlobalABC representing Senegal, who worked on a national project in order to develop new technology materials with tertifa material. Several types of material were tested, and we did have an accomplishment of a group of building, the Eco Pavilion in Diamniadio, a new area. This is representative of new constructions which we could implement in Senegal. It's like a meeting room or school room. Another building is for housing. We also have a workshop there. So all these constructions with using new materials, using blocks, insulation materials, etc., in order to test and to show what can be done with these kinds of materials. The difficulty that we had, which we had with the BTC, we needed to have this being approved until they are fully normalized and approved. I think Ernest or someone else would talk about this much better than I would. talking about the whole process to get this approved. For example, there were discussions going on with the various verification committees to have these constructions approved. What else could I say? Another important point, and we are paying attention to this, is that we are working on this whole normative and regulatory environment in Senegal. That's part of a larger program regarding energy efficiency of building and construction in connection with the French Development Agency. We are trying to implement these rules and regulations to be more efficient, energy efficient, taking into account the environmental issues. This is important to also include these new materials. We are also insisting with the contractors, and we raise awareness about these issues to make sure that we can use these materials in the tender bids, in the specifications, etc., which is very important as part of this program. Just before the summer, we launched a call to proposals for sustainable building in Senegal. We want to see some projects stand out from either public or private contractors who could be carrying these pilot projects with bioclimatic precepts and principles, with innovative materials, and to strengthen their competencies by a technical support, to have specifications with the use of these principles in their building methods. We want to push forward this new project. Thank you, Hélène. It was a good discussion. There is another question from Mr. Granier asking if we could reconcile the invasive systems and its use in the long term in green sectors. I don't know if you got the question. Maybe he can ask a question himself if he's there. I think I got the gist of it. As was said in the video, this plant is invasive. We're talking about an invasive plant for the last 30, 40 years, which is causing a lot of problems in the Senegal River, with difficulties for access to water for fishermen, etc. It's a huge problem in that area for local life. And many efforts were carried out for the last few years to try to get rid of this resistant, robust plant, which keeps growing back. We're working on an assessment of occupied land on both sides of the riverbanks. We're not seeking to, we don't pretend to control TIFA, but we want to secure a supply for our needs, especially for the building sector. Because of the huge amount of TIFA, we're not concerned about that. But it's a whole logistical issue to try to improve the harvest. We need to reserve some dedicated zones to manage TIFA for production, and other areas like canals, that would be free of the TIFA plant, to get rid of it, because it's a real nuisance. We are trying to manage and organize various zones around the TIFA. I don't know if I answered your question or not. I think so. It was very interesting to hear the various aspects of your project. All the participants can look at the video again. I have put the link, I have posted the link in the chat. Now we're going to move on to our second pitch. We have 15 minutes left before the end of this workshop. Just one thing, small thing, if you allow me. As part of the TICAO project, we have ongoing works in the north for getting rid of the TIFA. We do have specifications asking us to get rid of TIFA, but not to develop it elsewhere or differently. So our specifications for getting rid of TIFA is asking us to cut the TIFA to a certain length, but projects like TICAO actually could not be reusing TIFA because in our specifications, we are specifically asked to cut it. When we're talking about sustainable development and specifications, sometimes we are facing these kinds of situations. We are asked to get rid of the TIFA altogether, actually. Okay, thank you.
Ok, donc on va pouvoir passer à la deuxième au deuxième pitch.
Let's move on now to our second pitch, following our call for contributions. We will hear now our next speaker. You can have 5 minutes. You have the floor. I will share my presentation, my screen with you. Ladies and gentlemen, following the call for contributions of climate change, I have the great honor to show you an alternative to low carbon to contain the 1.5 to 2 degrees by 2050. This is a green solution called NTIB, New Technologies for Building. The building sector is one of the most polluting sectors in the world, responsible for 38% of the gas emission and of 40% of final energy consumed. This sector also generates billions of tons of waste from the building constructions. This also has an impact both before the life cycle and after the life cycle. So this process is an innovative solution in order to try to reduce the carbon print. This has been approved in France and internationally. It has been approved by the CSTB and the DECRA inspection office. We also asked for 2 specialized offices in France, Elodie CSTB and Eva Conseil, and we have received today a report from the ACV. So what is that all about? How is it different to other types of process? It doesn't require no use of ETF for it is reusable for all the floors, which means that we can have immediate use, which helps save time in the implementation. The main asset is because it is reduced in its weight up to 50% for large buildings. We have less charges while ensuring a better stability of the structure. This NTIB process allows a reduction of the concrete volumes and steel volumes. It's a mixed kind of floor using only a 8 centimeters concrete base instead of 20 to 25. Just to give you an illustration, for a building of 10 stories, it has reduced the thickness of about 30% 37%. Now let's move on to the cost saving that have been done through this process. As you can see, for concrete, 37, for steel as well, 37%. So the use of NTIB as an alternate for low carbon would save up to 133 billion tons for concrete, 0.48 for concrete, cement, and for the steel. This is on a yearly basis. In terms of savings for natural resources, if we were to use this new alternate, we could save a lot, mainly in terms of natural resources, water, sand, aggregate, on a yearly scale, with a saving on 1.59 billion tons, 10 billion tons per year, 240 million cubic meters per year. Now, looking at the ecological data, this solution would contribute to a radical reduction of CO2 emissions in the building sector. Here you can see the annual savings in terms of CO2 for each of the material. We're talking about the concrete, cement, 420 millions of tons equivalent CO2 per year. Cement would account for 410 million equivalent tons per year. And for the other materials such as sand and recycled steel, we see a lot of economy there, thanks to the use of this new NTIB process. Besides these advantages, which we have just seen, another technical advantage which could help, even as you can see on this picture, we could go even beyond those 6 meters that you can see here, giving the architects and contractors the possibility of developing green spaces in order to captivate more CO2. At the beginning, we saw this innovation and the innovative aspect of this new process. It is a very economical, cost-saving solution that can be used immediately, whether it be for constructions, for housings. It is very easy to use and simple to use, and all the components are already available everywhere in the world. This process would not shake or change the regular construction modes, yet it would ensure a great advantage and a gain. For example, a building of 14 stories with a gain of 25% on the overall project. If we manage to develop this alternative with NTIB at a world scale, then we would contribute to a significant reduction of gas emissions. We will also be able to meet the global challenge of reducing by 2% the GHG emissions, and we would also limit the overexploitation of natural resources such as sand and water. And if there is one word that should gather all, it should be the word ecology. Thank you very much. It was very well presented. I would encourage you also again to look at the videos that were sent regarding this new innovative process. Thank you. Do we have any reactions following, or rather from our other speakers following this speech? It's a new project which we have spotted this year. I don't know if any of our speakers would like to comment on this.
Ou des questions aussi de la part des participants, parce que en fait,
or maybe questions from our participants. We just have a few minutes left. If anyone wants to send a question, please take this opportunity if you want to ask questions to anyone.
Je crois que j'en avais repéré une d'ailleurs. Mais merci beaucoup, Kamal.
Je vous en prie, c'est moi.
Thank you very much anyway for your presentation. Mr. Kamal.
Alors.
Eva, c'est Jonathan.
Oui.
Eva, this is Jonathan speaking. One question from Mr. Kamal. I was wondering about this new technology. Can this technology be easily replicable or transferred, transmitted to others? How would you do this or go about doing this? How would you go about sharing this or transmitting this strategy to others? This technology at a global level, how would you make it more accessible? We are in a global challenge regarding climate change. So we wanted to make sure that the cost of this project would not be a barrier for other potential users. It's the cost is very low. So this can be accessible to many. In order to facilitate access to this new process, we are still working on this, of course. We have thought about developing a digital platform to give access to any actor, whether an architect, a contractor, a builder, so that they can look at the pros of this process and then to start ordering this process and start using it. We are looking at the easiest model to make this as easy as possible for a greater number of people. We are also looking at partners in order to have a showcase project to build towers, both in Africa and elsewhere. The higher you build, the more savings and the less gas emissions you get. So a showcase project would be a good thing to invite world stakeholders to come and look at this project to see how we can reduce gas emissions. We have very good figures, results. We have up to 37% of gas emission reductions. And everyone is looking for solutions at the moment. So we would like to have this project as an alternative to contribute to the carbon neutral pathway by 2050. I was also wondering, this is a little bit what Mrs. Keita was saying in the chat, have you already identified places for your pilot project in order to develop this process? what will you be doing in the coming months? In our group, we are also developing some real estate projects, like in Marrakesh. We are building about 40 villas. We started the first villas with a whole range of green solutions. These villas are under construction. We have also included other solutions which we have adopted in this project. We are building according to a integrated ecological building solutions, plus other solutions that are being developed elsewhere. Our sector in the real estate construction is making sure that we are respecting all these solutions. We have also found a piece of land in Rabat to build a tower of 28 stories high with vegetalization up to 6 meters high to catch the CO2, as you could see on the picture earlier on. And we are open to all other kinds of partnerships, mainly in Africa, and to start building our first projects in Africa. One very last question, if you could answer in a few seconds, from Amadou Terra. What will be the cost of this new technology compared to a classical type of technology? What is the cost of this new technology? That's a question. A reduction of 20%.
Vous savez très bien que le plancher le plus utilisé, c'est la
What is used the most? Okay, sorry. The minimum savings between this new technology and the classic technology, we're talking about 20% less in any country. Beside the economical aspect, of course, there are other aspects. We know how to do this. We know how to do this because it takes less time. So the other gain, if you like, is also an economy of time. We can build much faster and quicker than other buildings.
J'espère que j'ai répondu à votre question.
I hope I answered your question. Just to come to the conclusion now, I think it was really interesting. We had different viewpoints from either local governments, from some association and startups. Thank you all for taking part in this workshop. And we will meet again next year in Dakar for the next Climate Change Summit 2022. Thank you to all of our speakers. This afternoon, we will have the closing plenary sessions. If you are not registered yet, please do so and come and listen to our speakers for the closing session. The mayor of Dakar will be there. The mayor of Poitiers will be there, and several other actors. Thank you all, and we shall meet again very soon. Thank you and bye-bye. Thank you, bye-bye.